Welcome to the CompreDrive LVDT distance add-on introduction video. In this video we want to explain to you how to mount the LVDT distance add-on on your CompreCell. Here we have the parts. We have the bottom sensor holder, two mounting aids, the cantilever and a CompreCell. First we want to mount the bottom sensor holder on the cell. We will place the sensor holder on the mounting aid and insert the cell into the mold. Make sure that there is an angle of 20 to 30 degrees between the sensor holder on the left and the temperature probe insert. Now I can tighten the grub screws and fix the bottom sensor holder on the cell. It is important to align the cell in a way that the grub screws do not touch the grooves in the base plate, but the protrusions. If you want to have reliable dilatometry measurements, you need to have temperature control. So I'll go ahead and insert the cell into the thermal jacket. At this point, please make sure that the cell is well aligned and it sits steady on the platform. For example, if it tends to slip out of the peak ring in the bottom, like this, you have to realign it before you can approach the CompreDrive. Also, you can wiggle on the cell a little bit like this to make sure that it is well aligned. And if you have a permanent problem with tipping of the cell, most likely you need to rearrange the heating jacket by loosening the fasteners in the back here and realigning the heating jacket. Next, we want to mount the cantilever on the cell. We will use the cantilever placement aid that is available in different versions, for example for 12mm, 10mm CompreCells and for CompreDrive and CompreFrame. I will attach the placement aid on the cantilever and place the assembly on the upper piston. And then I rotate the cantilever in a way that the sensor holders are aligned with the cantilever. After that I can tighten the grub screws. Please make sure that you do not rotate the cantilever after tightening the grub screws, because this might damage your sample. Now let's talk a little bit about the assembly. The mounting aids that we used before helped us to adjust appropriate air gaps between the parts of the dilatometer and the cell. So in the bottom you can see that there is a small air gap between the peak ring of the CompreDrive platform, and on the top you can see that there is an air gap between the lids of the cell and the cantilever. We also want to make sure that the sensor holder does not touch the tubes of the circulator. Before we can mount the sensors, we need to approach the CompreDrive. So I will go ahead, close the device and start the approach procedure. Please monitor the cell during the approach. Make sure that you do not see any tipping movements, and if the cell starts to slide off the platform or is misaligned, please hit retract immediately or use emergency stop switch. Next, we want to mount the sensors. I have already connected my 3 sensors to the multi-data sampler, and I will start with the sensor on channel 1. It doesn't really matter because they are all equivalent. I will insert the sensor from the bottom here, and when the sensor touches the cantilever, please make sure that it only touches the insulated center part. During the mounting process, We want to monitor the sensor signal on the computer to make sure that we don't exceed the working range. And when we have adjusted the sensor to a deflection of approximately 30%, we can fix it in place. I will repeat the same process with all 3 sensors. Generally, please be aware that the sensors are grounded and make sure that the sensors do not touch the temperature probe or any parts of the cell holders. So for example, on the cantilever there is an insulated part in the middle where the probe is supposed to touch, but it's not supposed to touch any other parts of the cell. On the other hand, the bottom sensor holder metal parts should not be touched by the sensor. Now the LVDT distance add-on for cylindrical CompreCells is fully assembled. The LVDT distance add-on uses a center of mass calculation to determine the movement of the upper piston. So it is important for the distance server to know the sensor geometry. It will navigate to the geometry tab, select the 3 sensor setup and use the presets for CompreCell 6 and 12. Last, we have to select the sensors that are actually in use. I will select the LVDT channels 1 to 3. And at this point the software setup is done. The distance server will send data to CompreDriveControl in the background, as long as both programs are running on the same computer. We can navigate to the manual control plots and select the individual sensors or the average value for all 3 sensors, which is what we would normally want to use. At this point you can tear and start your measurement. To tear, move to the tear ribbon, insert the tear value and click Apply to All. If you are using a CompreFrame instead of a CompreDrive, there are only 2 differences. First, you will be using another lid because you need more clearance, and you have to do the first approach manually. Both CompreDrive and CompreFrame can be used with an H add-on and the LVDT distance add-on. Of course, it is also possible to use the distance add-on in the CompreFrame in conjunction with an HC add-on.